Press your palm flat against the table in front of you. Push down until you feel the surface pushing back, solid and cold and completely there. Here is the strange part. Not one atom in your hand has ever made contact with one atom in that table. The pressure you feel is your own electrons refusing to let another set of electrons come near them. A force, not a touch, and the two are not the same thing. And once you understand why the touch never happens, you have to ask what exactly the feeling is, because the feeling is undeniably real. Your hand is not resting on the table. Your hand is hovering above it, held up by an invisible cushion. And that cushion is one of the four fundamental forces of the universe doing its job at a distance too small for you to imagine. The gap is real. It has a size. And the sensation you call solid is your nervous system's translation of a force it can measure, but never explain to you honestly, because honesty at this scale sounds like a lie. So how big is the gap? Around a nanometer, give or take, a millionth of a millimeter, for surfaces that look and feel perfectly pressed together. That number sounds too small to matter, but scale it up and it becomes the entire story. Blow one atom up to the size of a football stadium, and the nucleus, the dense center where nearly all the mass lives, is a single grain of rice sitting on the center spot. The electrons are somewhere up in the nosebleed seats. Everything in between, the whole roaring stadium of empty space, is what you are made of. You are, by volume, about 99.9999999% nothing. Which raises the question that ruins a comfortable afternoon. If you are almost entirely empty, and the table is almost entirely empty, why don't you fall straight through it? Two clouds of mostly nothing should pass through each other like fog through fog. They don't. And the reason they don't has nothing to do with the stuff of atoms and everything to do with the rules the stuff obeys. Here is the first rule, and it is the load-bearing wall of this entire video. Electrons carry negative charge. Like charges repel. The same reason two magnets shove apart when you force the wrong ends together. As the electrons on your palm approach the electrons on the table, the repulsion between them climbs, not gently but ferociously, rising steeper and steeper the closer they get. Push harder and the force pushes back harder still, faster than your pushing can gain on it. You would need to compress that gap with a pressure found inside collapsing stars before the electrons gave any real ground. Your arm cannot come close, so you stop. You feel table. Think of it like two powerful magnets, north facing north, one in each hand. Bring them together and you feel the resistance build in the air between your palms. A springy, invisible wall that gets stiffer the harder you press, and your hands never actually meet. Now shrink that magnetic wall down to the scale of atoms, make it billions of times stiffer, and lay it across every point where your skin meets the world. That wall is what you have been calling touch your entire life. You have felt the wall. You have never felt the thing on the other side of it. But electric repulsion alone doesn't finish the job. And this is where most explanations stop too early and get it slightly wrong. If it were only about negative charges pushing apart, atoms could still be squeezed much closer than they are, because inside every atom the positive nucleus is pulling those electrons back in. There is a second law running underneath the first, quieter and far stranger, and without it the world would collapse into a paste. So what actually holds the atom open? In 1925, a 25-year-old physicist named Wolfgang Pauli wrote down a principle that sounds like bureaucracy and turns out to be architecture. The Pauli exclusion principle says that no two electrons can occupy the exact same quantum state at the same time. Think of it as assigned seating with no standing room. Every electron must have its own seat, its own energy, its own spin, and once a seat is taken, no other electron may sit in it. Not prefers not to, cannot. It is forbidden by the deepest grammar of reality. Here is why that matters for your hand on the table. When you press two surfaces together, you are trying to shove the electrons of one into the space already occupied by the electrons of the other. But those seats are full. To force your electrons closer, physics has to promote them to higher, emptier seats. Seats with far more energy. That promotion costs enormous energy, and that energy cost shows up in your body as resistance. This is called degeneracy pressure, and it has almost nothing to do with charge. It is pure quantum accounting. It is the universe refusing to double book a seat, and that refusal is stiff enough to hold up the table, hold up your body, and hold up entire dead stars against their own crushing gravity. Let that land for a second. The same rule that stops your finger from sinking into a countertop is the rule that keeps a white dwarf star, the burnt-out core of a sun, packed to where a teaspoon weighs several tons, from crushing itself into nothing. Not fire, not motion, just electrons refusing to share a seat. The floor under your feet, and the corpse of a star, are held up by the exact same stubbornness. Now, I want to be straight with you about something, because this idea gets oversold constantly. You'll hear people say that solidity is entirely the Pauli exclusion principle, and that electric charge has nothing to do with it. That's the fashionable correction, and it's repeated as if it settles the matter. The honest picture is messier. Both are running at once: electromagnetic repulsion and quantum exclusion, and which one dominates depends on the material and the distance. For the everyday feeling of pressing your hand on wood, exclusion is doing the heavy lifting at the closest range, but charge repulsion is very much in the room. Anyone who tells you it's cleanly one or the other is tidying up a fight that physics hasn't tidied up. The mechanism holds. The certainty gets inflated in the retelling. So step back and look at what we've built. You have two invisible walls stacked on top of each other at the surface of everything you own. One made of charge, pushing like magnets. One made of quantum law, forbidding electrons from crowding. Together they generate the entire experience of a solid world. The chair, the floor, the coffee cup, the hand of someone you love. Every one of those contacts is a force field pressing on a force field, and the space in between is never crossed. And here's a question I'd bet you've never thought to ask. If nothing is touching, why does anything feel like anything at all? Where does smooth come from? Where does cold? Because the sensation is not coming from the object. The sensation is being manufactured inside you, and the object is only casting a vote. Consider what actually happens when you run a fingertip across glass. Your skin has mechanoreceptors, tiny pressure sensors buried in the tissue. 4 main types, each tuned to a different kind of deformation. One of them, the Pacinian corpuscle, sits deep in the skin and responds to vibration in the range of a couple hundred cycles per second. As your finger drags, the electron walls between your skin and the glass push and release, at high frequency along every microscopic ridge. The Pacinian corpuscle feels that vibration and fires. Your brain reads the pattern and calls it smooth. Smoothness is a frequency. You are not feeling the glass. You are feeling the rhythm of a force field strumming your nerve endings, and your brain is composing music out of it. Now cold. When you touch a metal railing on a winter morning and it feels colder than the wooden bench beside it, the two are the same temperature. You can check with a thermometer. What you're feeling isn't temperature at all. You're feeling the rate at which heat leaves your hand. Metal pulls warmth out of your skin fast because it conducts well. Wood pulls it slowly. Your nerves don't measure how cold the object is. They measure how quickly your own heat is fleeing. Cold metal is a sensation about you, reported as if it were about the railing. If you've ever been baffled that a metal spoon feels freezing while the towel next to it feels fine, that's the answer, and almost nobody has ever told it. Let me put the whole sensing process in one picture you can hold. Imagine a deep-sea buoy floating on the surface, wired to a station on shore. The station never sees the ocean. It only reads the buoy's bobbing, how fast, how hard, how often, and from that pattern it reconstructs a picture of the waves below. Your brain is that shore station. It is sealed inside the dark, silent vault of your skull. It has never seen the world, never felt the world, never touched the world. It only reads the bobbing of your nerve endings, force fields strumming, heat draining, receptors firing, and from those signals it builds the vivid, seamless, utterly convincing sense that you are in direct contact with solid things. You are not. You are the shore station, reading buoys, and you have never once left the vault. If that just rearranged something about your own hands, hold on, because there's a layer under this that's stranger than the empty space and the force fields put together, and it's about 4 minutes off. Subscribe now, because that last section is the reason I made the whole video, and I don't want you to miss the turn. So let's go deeper into the empty space, because I've been slightly cheating you with the word empty. What is actually in the gap between your electrons and the table's electrons? Nothing? Not quite. The gap is filled with the electromagnetic field, and the field is not passive. It is the thing doing the pushing. When physicists describe how 2 electrons repel, the modern picture isn't 2 balls shoving each other. It's an exchange. The electrons trade particles of light, photons, back and forth, and that constant exchange of virtual photons is the repulsion. The force you feel pressing back on your palm is, at the deepest level we can currently describe, a blizzard of light passing between your atoms and the table's atoms, too faint and too fleeting to see, carrying the message, not here, keep out, seat taken. Read that again, slowly. When you lean on a wall, the wall pushes back on you with light. Invisible, borrowed, momentary light. But light all the same. You have spent your life resting against beams you cannot see, which forces a genuinely uncomfortable question about hardness. If touch is a force and never a contact, is anything truly solid, or is solid just the name we give to a force strong enough to stop a hand? I think the honest answer is the second one, and physicists don't fully agree on how to talk about it. Solidity isn't a property an object has on its own. Solidity is a relationship between the strength of a material's electron walls and the strength of whatever is pushing on them. Push with a fingertip, granite is solid. Push with a diamond drill under tons of load, granite yields. The rock didn't change. The contest did. Hardness is a verb pretending to be an adjective. And this reframes weight, too. When you sit in a chair, gravity is pulling your entire body toward the center of the earth. And it never stops pulling. Right now, this second, you are in a continuous fall that the chair is interrupting. What holds you up isn't the wood. It's those stacked electron walls in the seat, generating exactly enough upward force to cancel gravity's downward pull. You are not sitting. You are being held moment to moment, in a standoff between two forces, hovering a nanometer above a chair you will never touch, by particles refusing to share seats, and light passing back and forth in the dark. The stillness you feel is not rest. It is a battle at perfect draw. There's a recognition beat I want to name here, because you've felt this and never had the words. That faint, almost electric awareness right before your fingers meet something in the dark. The sense that the object is there, a hair before you reach it. That's not imagination, and it's not magic. Your skin is warm. The object radiates or absorbs heat. The air between carries subtle cues, and part of what you register as contact begins before the force walls even engage. The moment of touch is smeared out. There is no clean instant where not touching becomes touching, because touching, in the way you always meant it, never occurs at all. There is only the wall getting stiffer. Now here is the layer I promised, and it's the one that unsettles me most. We've established that you never touch the world, that every contact is a force field read by a nerve and reconstructed by a brain in the dark. But go one step further and ask about the electrons themselves. The ones doing all this pushing. Are they even little balls with surfaces that could, in principle, meet? No. As far as every experiment has ever been able to measure, the electron is a point. It has no size at all, no surface, no skin, nothing to press against another thing. It is a location where a property exists, not an object with an edge. So even if you could somehow force two electrons to the same spot, there would be no surface of one meeting the surface of another. There's nothing there to touch. Touch, at the bottom of physics, isn't just difficult or forbidden. It isn't defined. The concept dissolves before you reach anything solid enough to apply it to. If even one of these reframed how you sit in your own chair, hit-like, it's the one signal that tells the algorithm to hand this to someone else who's been going through life certain they've been touching the world. So what do we do with this? Not despair, the opposite. Because notice what your body pulled off. Working only with force fields and firing nerves, sealed in the dark, your brain built a world so seamless, so convincing, so useful, that you have walked through it for decades, without ever once suspecting the walls weren't walls. That is not a failure of perception. That is the single most sophisticated act of engineering in the known universe, running silently every waking second, and it belongs to you. The map isn't the territory, but your map is so good you have never needed to know the difference to catch a falling glass. There's one more honest uncertainty I owe you before the end. Physicists can describe all of this, the fields, the exchange of photons, the exclusion, the point-like electron, with staggering precision. The equations predict experiments to 11 decimal places. But if you ask what an electron actually is when nobody is measuring it, whether it's a particle or a wave or a smear of possibility, the field splits into camps that have argued for a century and are still arguing. We can predict the push perfectly. We cannot fully agree on what is doing the pushing. That gap in understanding is real, and anyone who pretends it's closed is selling certainty the physics doesn't have. Tell me something in the comments, and answer it honestly from your own life. What is the one thing you were most sure you'd physically touch today, and how does it feel now to know you didn't? I read these, and I want to see where this lands for people. Here's where it leaves me. Somewhere in your life there is a person whose hand you have held and meant it, and the atoms of your hand and theirs never met, and never will, not once, not ever. The warmth was real, the pressure was real, the love was real, and all of it was carried across a gap that never closed, by forces you can't see, into a brain that has never left the dark. If that reframes anything for you, send this to the one person you'd most want to sit beside knowing it. You never touched them, you reached them anyway, and maybe that was always the more astonishing thing.